I have been asked to look at the Ranger as a playing class. If you see here, you'll see that I have four um, character files named after the class. So Mage, Paladin, Priest, and Ranger. I never play with a rogue. I never play with a warrior. I played with a warrior for years, and I don't think I've ever won with a warrior, or maybe once. Well, okay, no, I did win many, many, many years later, and they are by far the most difficult class to win with. They're the best class to do the first, 10 levels with when you are really new to this game, because you don't need to learn any of the additional commands. Maybe just, how to wield a torch, how to eat some food, or to drink a potion. That's about it. But the warrior is very limited in the amount of ways that it can manage monsters. It is very limited in the ways that it can win. Essentially, you're going to win with a melee weapon. You will be fighting Morgoth, so you will need sustains. Generally, that's fairly easy because that means you'll have a shield of... you could have, I suppose, a robe of permanence if you choose not to wear any armor, essentially. You'll do with a shield of preservation or an amulet of sustenance, but they're not great for a class that really needs to buff up the strength, dexterity, and constitution stats, because they just really do 2 resists for the shield, or the amulet is maybe a little bit better, but you do not get to wear an amulet after that, something that may give you a big boost. So they're really not that great as classes. You do depend until the very end. Until the very end, you're depending on potions to heal yourself. You're depending on scrolls to phase. You'll need to carry your own food, which is ridiculous because you're the only class that needs to use food. Anything that breeds cold, anything that breeds shards, will be destroying those. So the warrior really is, to me, the most difficult class. It's just infuriating. And maybe, you'll get to the end with 700 or 800 damage against Morgoth, more likely if you have Randarts. But it's just, you need to suffer to get all the way there. And the rogue is just really mediocre as a class. Now, all of these classes have a number of ways that they can win. So the mage, for example, the easiest way to win is to just use Chaos Blast. You've got Chaos Blast, it does a very large number of damage. It's in your spell books. You don't really need anything else. You just need some potions, some mana to hop around, phase door, and whenever Morgoth gets too close, you have a rune. So it's really easy to play with it. And on top of that, if you find a particular good bow, you can use a bow. If you find a artifact that gives you additional blows, you can choose to use a weapon. Because, if you find like a mace of destruction, or maybe a really good sight of a slay evil, or of extra attacks, you can do plenty of damage with that. And at that point, you have your haste spell, your resistance spell, your shield spell, your rune spell, and then whatever damage you do. And at that point, you're fighting as a warrior, but you're better than a warrior. Maybe your damage is a little bit less, but you get so much more. You get your banishment and mass banishment. You get your teleport. The warrior too will have a little bit of teleport. You know, you'll get down with some 10, 15 rods of teleport other. So it's not like you're in a terrible situation. But there is no real comparison in how easy it is to beat the game with a mage compared to a warrior. You can cast any number of teleport spells. With a warrior, you'll need to use the staff. The staff can burn, it can run out of mana. You don't have a recharging spell, so it is really pointless. If you're a paladin, the only real difference is that the warrior will get a maximum of 6 attacks per round. The paladin will get a maximum of 5 attacks per round. So it does a little bit less damage, but has all of the same inherent abilities of a warrior. The warrior does get resistance to fear at a certain point, but you get it far too late. Resistance to fear is everywhere. The paladin has a spell that removes fear, so any advantage that you may have out of that is gone. And then you get the heal spell, which completely replaces your potions. You get the enchanting spells that make your weapons better. You get teleport, portal. You get plenty of stuff that the warrior doesn't have. Even something as basic as resist heat and cold. So you have that spell, and all of a sudden you can then have double resistance against monsters like Glaurung or Skata or cold worms or anything like that. And you don't really lose anything. I mean, yeah, you do have to carry the books, but the stuff that's in the books is invaluable. And you can make your own food. The priest, got carried away. So the paladin has essentially the same way of winning that the warrior has, which is you get a big weapon and you bonk people on the head with the big weapon. But then you get all the additional bonuses. And orb is not really something that you can use for the very last end game, because it doesn't do that much damage when you cast it. It costs a lot more mana than it costs when a priest casts it. But you've got all the spells that we mentioned, and then you too can use a bow if you find it. If you find a particularly good bow, and maybe you find something that has additional shots, you can use that. Great. The priest has the obviously the orb. It has a annihilation spell, which is not great because it costs a lot of mana. It doesn't really do that much damage. It's supposed to be really an end game spell, but it's not. But then you also get Banish Evil, which is kind of a limited form of mass banishment. You get your Word of Destruction to, you don't get the XP, but you throw away the mobs that you don't want to fight. You have a Greater Recharging spell, and that recharging spell allows you, if you find wands of annihilation, then you can use those. And you can do a whole bunch of damage. It's about 400 damage per charge. And if you carry a whole bunch of them, a whole stack, you can burn the whole stack, and then you can jump to the other side of the map, reload them, and then you can jump back and finish Morgoth and only a few turns would have passed. So that's one thing that you have on top of everything else that the warrior has. The priest a lot of times doesn't have good enough melee. It's kind of the same level as the mage. I mean, if you find a good artifact weapon or a good mace of disruption, you can still do about 400 damage. And it's not bad. It's a little below what you would want, but then you have to consider that the priest has the rune as well. just like the mage and just like the ranger. For the priest, it's called the glyph, but it is the same exact spell. And at that point, you have your healing spell at 0% fail. You've got your rune. You've got ways to teleport other mobs away. Banish Evil actually works when you're fighting Morgoth, because when you use Banish Evil, everything that is evil will get sent away to the far edges of the map. And you say, okay, well, I was fighting Morgoth, I want to continue fighting him, but basically you got a few turns to, heal, drink some potions, take a few steps, and Morgoth will be coming back fast. So you'll rejoin the fight with Morgoth. The other monsters don't have as good of a pathing to get back to you. So they will take longer, they will move slower, they might be too far, and it is a functional tactic. So it's a brief delay in the fight. Morgoth may recover some hit points, but it is still actually something that you can use and profit from it. It's not a technique that puts you at a loss. And the ranger has by far the easiest endgame. There are situations where you can literally just keep your finger on the button H. If you see the flash of the mana storm, you drink a potion. Otherwise, you keep pressing H and Morgoth is dead. The reason is that the ranger has a special ability that triggers once a character level 20 and once a character level 40. And that is, you get one additional shot. If for some reason you're using a weapon that has multiple shots already, like there is a bow of extra shots, you only add one. However, down deep below, the ability only works with bows. It does not work with slings, it does not work with crossbows. It only works with bows. Deep below you find bows of Lothlorien. Now, these can go from 3x, so 3 times the arrow damage, plus the damage bonus of the bow, to 5 times. And it's not too crazy to find a bow that's 5 times and maybe plus 20 damage. I've seen even up to 25. That is a ridiculous amount of damage, and even with new arrows out of the shop, you do like the 550 damage. So plain, unenchanted, basic arrows, you do an enormous amount of damage. And then you can get better arrows than that. You can get arrows of Holy Might that can go up to 1,300 damage per round. And as a ranger, you really only need Constitution, because you're going to be tanking those mana storms from Morgoth. And that's it. So dexterity helps because it increases your 2-hit bonus. Intelligence helps because you will be casting a few spells. You're not really a pure spellcaster, so you don't have that great of spells, but you do have the rune. And because it's kind of secondary for you, the magic, when it comes to actually destroying things, you will be able to basically save your mana potions. You're not really going to be doing the last 10 uniques, and they all take 1 or 2 mana potions. So even if you have 10 mana potions by the end, that's more than sufficient. The mage has the ability to do all the last uniques with the hockey stick trick. The hockey stick is where you do a long line, you dig a long line sideways into the dungeon, and then you dig 1 tick to the side, and you stay around the corner, and you're basically shooting through this corridor, and you can kill the mobs as they come, and then you can also fill the corridor with runes. So call it a rune trap, call it a hockey stick. That essentially, you've seen it used before. You know what that is. And the ranger also has the same thing. The only real problem with the ranger is that arrows break, and you will be spending a lot of time cleaning up your inventory, making sure that you're fully stacked with as many arrows as possible. But you do have this as an option to win. The priest doesn't really have that. I mean, you do get to the glyph. You do get, obviously, the ability to dig through stone. Your orb is not very powerful when it comes to the end. And with the priest, you need to get a bit creative when you want to decide how to go about actually killing the important mobs. Often it is going to be some kind of a launcher. So if you find a really good crossbow, if you find a really good bow, even better if you find something that gives you additional shots. It could be through the Wands of Annihilation, because you can either choose, if you're in a hurry, maybe you're in the Morgoth fight, when you use graded recharging, you can recharge a stack. If you have 10 Wands of Annihilation and they're all empty, you can just recharge the stack. But you can also take some time, lay them down one by one on the ground separately, not have any in your inventory, and then you step over each one and you reload each one independently. Whenever you're trying to reload something, recharge, either with a scroll recharging, with the mage spell, the first recharging, with the priest spell, the greater recharging, it is important that the object needs to be at 0 charges. The higher the number of the charges already present, the more likely that the wand will be destroyed. So if you have a wand of teleport and you have 1 charge left and you want to recharge it, just shoot the 1 charge into the thin air and then recharge it. The ranger has essentially primarily the hockey stick way of winning, although, it's still someone that gets 5 attacks. So if you're trying to build a ranger and the best bow that you were able to find, that's only X4, not X5. Maybe you happen to have a lot of sustains in your randomized artifact set. Maybe you happen to have very high stat bonuses. At that point, you can just decide to melee, because it's the same reasoning as between the paladin and the warrior. You get so much more, and even though you're not primarily built to end the game via melee, you can. Just, you need to be able to look at a character and say, well, this character looks like it would be better suited to be a melee character because I found it is a fantastic weapon that has 8d8 of basic damage and slay evil, or maybe I have a ring that gives me +2 attacks. So that's the way that when you look at these classes, you'll then decide how to shape it. And when you have your home that is full of stuff, it's full of artifacts, at some point you're gonna throw them out. You need to look at that artifact and decide whether that's something that is better for a potential build, or it's more like better for a build that it's not really happening right now. If you haven't found anything that is pushing you towards melee, you have 120 strength, you have no sustained strength and dexterity. If you find a weapon that could be suitable, and for a weapon you can always stash it and throw away something else, but in general, unless it's something that's saying this would be great in that kind of a combination, I can make it work, then go with the primary way of beating the game. The Ranger is extremely slow. It is incredibly slow. When you start out, you're not good at magic, you're not good at fighting, you're barely competent even in shooting because you don't have anything decent to shoot with. When you get to level 20 and you get that one extra shot, you're a little bit better, assuming that you have something decent to shoot with. And they're not really common, but you can maybe find a longbow of power or a longbow of extra might or maybe a longbow of extra shots. And that's a good starting base, but it's nothing like a bow of Lothlorien. If you do find a bow of Lothlorien earlier on, you don't need anything else. You can just go from dungeon level 1 to dungeon level 100 straight away, nuke everything using your basic arrows. And also the Ranger gets Tensioner's Transformations, the book, and you get Heroism and Berserker, which both increase your 2-hit bonus, so you can stack those, and that increases how good you shoot. And also you get to make your arrows magical. You both can brand them, so they can be fire arrows, poison arrows, and so on, and also increase the 2-hit and 2-damage bonus. And that applies to every weapon. The Priest also has the enchantment, the Paladin has some limited enchantment bonuses, and the Mage also has bare bones enchanting that is not really worth talking about. But the problem is that the Ranger will have a lot of waiting. So it's a lot of, I'm not good enough for this, I cannot take these, I need to run away. It's kind of boring. It's more of a grindy character. It really, really is. And also, if you do like everyone else does, and you do the Ranger, that is Dunedain Ranger, and you get the penalty for XP from being a Ranger, and you get the penalty in XP for being a Dunedain, it takes forever. I think it's like 8 million XP that you need in order to cap. It's ridiculous. So the Priest is very, 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 very easy. It is almost ridiculously easy as a class, but there's a lot of things that you need to know. There's some few tricks earlier on. More than happy to show you those. After that, it becomes almost trivial. There's like this one tiny little speed bump at one point where you're looking for mapping and getting a few spell points. But essentially, you're a version of the Mage. You have one spell that nukes everything in the game except the maybe really, really most endgame uniques. And you are nearly untouchable because you have healing spells of every kind, plus your potions, plus your resistances, plus the banish, plus the glyph. And it's really hard at one point to determine how to fail. How can you possibly fail when you have all those things? You really have to, pay no attention whatsoever to die as a priest. So let's try a Ranger. Oh, that is fantastic. Game decided to glitch on me. It seems we'll need to do a new one. Remember, use alright, back in a second. So the first consideration is when you're creating a Ranger, a nice Dunedain Ranger, is the stats and also kind of the class selection. Dunedain is very solid. It only has bonuses, and you do get your 20 points that you can set and basically the first 6 points will give you 1 point each in that characteristic, after which it's 2 points more, after which is 4 points more, and then that's it. You can now go to 20. For the Ranger has an additional problem, really. It is that a lot of times you will go, okay, well, 6 points of strength, 8 points of dexterity, 6 points of constitution, and that's it. You're, basically a really bad fighter when you start on. In Angband, there's combat charts, or rather, there's things called weapons blows charts. This is a chart that has strength on one axis, has dexterity on another, and then based on the weight of the weapon, you get a certain amount of blows. And when your weapon is smaller, you get more blows. When your weapon is bigger, you get less, but they will all cap at the same number. So earlier on, a dagger is better. Later on, a big heavy mace is better, because once you get to 5 blows with the dagger, then you keep increasing your stats. You now get 5 blows with a sword, then you get 5 blows with a 2-handed hammer, and so on. And you really want the biggest one that you can get. And most players will basically set it like this and say, okay, well, I'm starting out, but this is a failed tactic. This will not work. You will not be able to win with a character. I mean, you can win with anything, but it's going to be even more frustrating. The reason is that the Ranger, in order to get more powerful, will need strength, dexterity, constitution, and intelligence. Obviously, when you're at the very end, all that you really need is only constitution. But we're talking about when a character is capped. All these are 18-100. And at that point, you don't really care if your strength has no bonuses whatsoever and you're just at 18-100, because it's not that much important. But when it's earlier on, you cannot get enough attacks. You cannot get hit things because your dexterity is low and so on. So this stat distribution is not going to work. What you need is intelligence. Now, as a Ranger, you get Magic Missile. And Magic Missile, as you've seen in the Mage playthrough, initially will kill everything. You don't get a lot of them, but they're still kind of good. And you also, as a Ranger, have all the good spells come very late, and when they do come, you have high fail rates and you have little mana, so it's very important that you manage to cast those spells. And if you left your intelligence at 10, you're not going to be able to. And maybe you've stumbled on a couple of potions of strength or toughness or nimbleness, and you lost a couple of points of intelligence as well, so you're not going to be in a good place. My advice is to do an even distribution with 5 points of strength, 5 points of 5 points of intelligence, 5 points of strength, 5 points of dexterity, and 5 points of constitution. This is good. It does give you an additional problem, which is that you're probably not going to be able to use those potions that we were just saying, like do the potion of intellect trick as a mage, because you will get more mana, you will get better spell casting rates, but you don't have the other spells that the mage does need. So the mage needs that mana to then use Frostbolt, Firebolt, Acid Bolt, and so on. And while you do get those, you get them at much later levels, much higher fail rates, and a ridiculous cost in spell points. So with a good mid-game characters, you may be able to cast 2 or 3 Frostbolts. Therefore, they are not actually suitable. You're going to be using almost exclusively Magic Missile or arrows. And if you cannot take it down with Magic Missile or arrows, don't try to kill it. We'll call it Ranger again. It will overwrite the previous character. Because this is new, I need to set the movement delay. And the key maps should have been added already. Birth options, there as usual. We have randomized artifacts. We did not disable selling. We do not have a kit or useful gear. First thing is, let's go see if there is anything in the shop that allows us to shoot. Oh, right, that's what I forgot. Center map continuously. There is no bow. What the hell? There is no bow, so I'm getting a bit of a weird lag here. I'm not sure what it is. And I am level 1. I can't even learn Magic Missile. Oh yeah, this is definitely lagging. I have no idea why. We'll go with a Rapier. Doesn't cost much. I really do need about 550 gold. Keep it for myself. What the hell is going on? 1 potion of Cure Light Wounds. 1 potion of Phase Door. Rangers are not known for their survivability at level 1. Okay, I'm gonna need to do a bit of debugging, but essentially the initial bit is going to be really boring. We're just going to be clearing dungeon level 1, get stashed up with a lot of junk, sell it, maybe make character level 3, and see how it goes from there. I'll see you in a bit. Right, I seem to have fixed it. I had inadvertently clicked the wrong option. So as a ranger, we would look for a bow to begin with. Sometimes it's there, most of the times it will not be there. What potion is this? That guy can easily kill me because I am incredibly weak. I only have a Rapier, because I get to the same type of attacks that I get from a dagger or from a Rapier. The Rapier does a little bit more damage. I forgot to buy food, so we'll go do that. But basically, I'm planning to... Whoa, 10 points of damage in one shot. I plan to be on dungeon level 1 for a long time. Because I'm really not capable. I would probably need to be character level 3 to even kill a soldier. I will constantly be coming back to see if something changes here. By the way, there's a kind of an interesting trick. I note here that unfortunately the weaponsmith has spawned with a maximum of 5,000. This really sucks. Although often in your run, not often, I think it can happen more than once, but it may happen sometimes that essentially the vendor changes, and so this amount gets reset. Many years ago, this actually meant something. So Ithelmac was the name of the vendor, and half troll meant that if you were a half troll, you would get the scald. But if you were a race that half trolls hated, you would pay more. So the trick is that if you buy everything that a vendor is selling, not just the weaponsmith, then the whole stock will refill. It doesn't really have that many practical applications, but you know, I suppose other people have used it, so I might as well tell you about it, because we haven't got a lot else to discuss right now. Get some food, get some torches, and that's it. It's common enough for a ranger at the start to have a sling, just because slings is what you find on dungeon level 1. So, and we still need to stash as many as possible of deep descent. The ranger isn't so sensitive to, doesn't benefit as much as the mage does. 1-8. Hold on a minute. So we are now going to quaff every potion that we find on the ground. 1-8. Okay, there was an invisible creature over there. I killed it, and I've gone up 4 hit points. 4 miserable, disgusting hit points. Angband really is a game about gambling, because it's the randomness of how things happen, and I think you get to the same exact feeling as, let's see if this is a buckland. No, it's a normal swing, but pebbles 9 damage, my rapier 5 damage. So actually not bad at all. I've learned the rune of... Oh my god. Okay, so I found ESP at dungeon level 1. I'm not sure that I'm gonna play this character, because this is such an absurd and unusual thing, and it just invalidates any kind of help. That you're not gonna be able to get any help from this. I mean, what are you gonna do? Wait until you two find ESP? That's just not gonna happen. ESP from a weapon is really not rare, to the point that you can almost count on it, but not at this depth. And the ranger is really slow and difficult earlier on, so a run that completely invalidates that is not going to be any use to you. I'll shut it off. I'm just really curious as to how many hit points this guy's going to get, but I'll shut it off and I'll think about it, and maybe we'll start a new one. Alright, cheers, bye bye.